It's the Digital Babble with your host, Flipper. Colorful commentary on your photography. Seen on fingerlakes1.com.
Hey everybody, it's the Digital Babble, this week's edition. It's Wednesday, 6:30 and 7 o'clock with Digital Babble and Flipper, that's me. And this is a talk show about photography and Photoshop, where I talk about different techniques and how to do different types of photography, how to get better photos, give some tips, techniques, tricks. We even review your photos if you send them in. We can review them, Photoshop them, take a little bit of time and show you different techniques on how to do different things in Photoshop. But before I get started on this week's topic, which is going to be full-length portraits, we were kind of doing a whole series about taking like senior portraits, high school senior portraits, and just doing them yourself in a sense to see what you can get and kind of get your creative juices going. Some of the techniques that we can use to get better portraits. But before we get started, I had a little brain teaser this last week on Facebook. Some friends had posted some photos of just these light streams that were kind of just bobbing around on the thing, and I forgot to download the photo to bring it with me to explain it. But it was kind of a fun brain teaser because there were several photos like that, and the person wanted everybody to guess what this object was or what was really going on with it. And of course, I technically took everything and dissected it and figured out that it was a reflection. There was some diffraction, so there must have been water involved. So I kind of guessed a type of boat or something, lights on a water, something like that. It was kind of really a fun thing to do. So if you ever get a chance, some of your, if you got a really good mess up, where you can really enjoy getting people involved, where, hey, what's this, and get people's minds going, thinking through it and going, oh, geez, what really is that? A lot of times macro shots are fun to play with doing that as well. What is this? And you get a really good macro shot, and it's so obscure that, it gives enough where you can answer the question, but it's just so out there that it really does give you a sense of accomplishment if you happen to guess it right. So, hey, Vicky, keep those coming because those are fun. I enjoy those. It's great to get the brain going, tear things apart and figure out if you're close or not close or whatever, making assumptions and stuff like that. So this week's Digital Babble is all about full-length portraits. Last week, if you go on our YouTube page or on our Digital Babble page, you can go back through any of the previous episodes. The previous one was just a general head and shoulders shot, so head and shoulders, so right about the breast up to the top of the head. How to get some good portraits like that. The previous show of that was portrait sessions, how to do a general portrait session, like a high school portrait session with your kid or with a friend's kid or whatever, and take your camera out and get some pretty decent photos. And so moving ahead in this series, because there's several different types of portraits you can take. You can take a head and shoulder shot, you can take a full length portrait shot, which is what we're going to talk about tonight, and then you can do like a 3/4 shot, which would be just above the knees to the top of the head. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get these shots. So next week's show is going to be all about that. So starting off with what a full-length portrait really is. Full-length portrait really is just everything. It's pretty much you are seeing the entire person's body in the frame. It could be an environmental shot. It could be just really just them on a white background. So there's a lot of different ways this can pan out. My favorite shots usually are environmental shots. In other words, it's a full-length portrait, but they're in something. They're in a scene, like a background, like with a school or maybe the lake or a cloudscape or whatever, and kind of giving a general sense of the full-length portrait. Here is the entire human body as I see it through the camera, and shape them up and do what it needs to be done. and take the picture. So doing full-length portraits usually involve a few different things. One is, depending on how high or how tall you are compared to your subject, depends on where you're going to put your camera when you take this. And what I mean is that we change our perspective according to our subject and where the subject is, because we want to make the subject be the key focus of the frame. We also want the subject to look proportionately right inside that frame. So sometimes you might take a shot from above and it might seem like the subject is retracted or belittled or small or compressed because of the perspective change. Where maybe if you're shooting from below and going up, you might have a totally different perspective. So it's something to keep in mind is the plane of where you're shooting. What is the plane that your lens is on? How high is your lens compared to the subject itself? So speaking in full-length portraits, when we take a full-length portrait, we typically, if we want to start at a good starting point is to get down on your knees or, bring the camera down to about their navel area or belly button area and aim the center of the lens right there. Now recompose the shot to get what you're looking for the portrait, and this will give you a sense of fullness into the frame. In other words, it really looks like they belong where they're belonging, as well as it also gives you a very good gauge of how much depth of field you can work with, what your lighting looks like, so you're not skewing the lighting because you're high or low or side to side, because you got on that plane, you're down where that subject is. So that being said, let's get into some examples and we can talk a little bit more about that as we go through this. If it wants to load, I did put a lot of examples out here, so it does take a second to load here. So if you remember a few shows ago, one of the diagrams that I always talk about is, light sources and, getting the light source off a camera. Because as light hits any reflective surface, which skin is reflective, everything's reflective to a certain degree. I don't think I know of anything other than a black hole in space, which sucks light in and doesn't let it back out. So, this applies to just about any subject. The light source comes in, hits the subject, and then bounces back to the camera, and that's how you're capturing the image. That being said, when we start looking at how to take portraits, we want to get the light off of the center plane. We don't want this diagram to look like it's straight in, straight back, because you lose depth. You lose that three-dimensional look. You lose that feel that they actually are part of a three-dimensional photo, per se. Even though it's really two dimensions, but they can kind of fit. It's kind of that artistic painterly thought process of getting shadow, light, composition, all to work together in harmony to produce something that is appealing to the eye. And what might be appealing to you might not be appealing to somebody else, but getting the light source off camera typically is a great way to start with getting that separation, that three-dimensional look, showing depth, showing shadow, all that good stuff. So that being said, when we start talking about full portraits, here's a diagram of a basic setup, getting the light source off of camera. In this setup, the light source is now off to the left side of the photographer, shooting at the person. The lighted side is more on the right side of the person, but left side of the frame. The shadow falls to the right side. This is a real basic setup. It's a 45-degree angle light or, 20-degree angle light or whatever, just to get it off center so that when light hits features like the eyes, the lips, the creases in the jowl area, I guess you could say, in the face, they show up, and they show up as defined instead of being this kind of blob, just blob of color. You actually get a little bit of a line and you see it. And this is a great way to really think about when you're working with what type of subject. So like saying if you're working with a female, okay? So let's get sexist for a second. We're going to talk female and males here, okay? With a male, you can get away with a lot of harsh lighting, like far left, far right, and the lines in the face, because it might lend more to that person to see a little bit more of the lines in the face and the more definition, kind of rugged or whatever the case may be. But when it comes to women, typically we want to soften their skin. We want to make it gently soft, not overly soft. We don't want their face to become just a flat two-dimensional blob, but we do want it to be soft. We don't want the lines to be so harsh that it, really falls out of the dimension. It doesn't look appealing anymore. It just looks flat. It just doesn't look good. So by thinking about how to make that happen in a female portrait, we might only bring the light source maybe 2 feet, 3 feet off a camera to the right or left side, fire the flash from there or keep the light source from there, and then, it'll put the directional light into the face and into the body and show everything very three-dimensionally. It gives some separation between the background and the foreground and the subject. But at the same time, it'll also lend itself to make sure that those features are not overly exaggerated. You're not going to get the deep, dark jowl on one side and the deep, dark jowl on the other side, the cheeks as they smile. You get the line here. You're not going to get that harsh line per se. Now, you move the light source further. So we move it further off camera, to the left or to the right. You're going to get more deeper, darker shadows. You're going to get more definition. You're going to get more lines in the face. You're going to get that harsher look to it. And again, like I said, typically speaking, it lends itself more to the female or male side. The harsher shadows are a little bit more to the male side to give that rugged look. And the softer, gentler, here we are, female look. So it just depends on what you're looking for. I mean, you can definitely, I'm not trying to say that you can't take a more harsher look to a female or less harsher look to a male. I mean, I'm not saying that, but that's just kind of like some starting points where you can kind of look at and go, okay, well, let's try some nice soft lighting. Don't go too far off camera, but light it from the side, and let's see how our subject, fares with that type of lighting. So that's where getting the light source off camera, either direction, doesn't matter which way, really lends itself to producing interesting shots, producing some great compositional shots and great lit shots, which is a key point to when you're taking portraits, especially when you're you're trying to do your own senior portraits. I had a young lady 2 years ago talk about doing her own self-portraits, and what she would do is she would set her camera up on tripod, compose the shot, and kind of marked out where she had to be, and then she would set this 10-second timer, jump into the frame, pose it up, and then when it fired, that was the shot she got. And she did her entire senior portrait that way, which was, in my mind, absolutely amazing for a 17, 18, 19-year-old person to think in that respect and actually go do it and be very successful with it. So this can actually be a fun self-project as well, taking your own portrait. So keep that in mind. Get the light source off. Try to figure out what your best side is, because, a lot of people always say, well, my best side's my right side, or my best side's the left side, or the best side's my back side. I've heard that one too. You could kind of step back from it and just kind of let the portrait work itself by taking a couple different shots with the light in different areas, and from different lengths, further back, closer, further away from the camera, closer to the camera, just to soften or harshen the lines in the face and and the body too as well. So keep that in mind when we're talking about, these full-length portraits, because the lighting always stays constant. It's always one of the biggest things in taking a photo, whether it's full-length, head and shoulders, or 3/4. Lighting and directional lighting is always the biggest thing that actually makes or breaks a photo typically. The next thing that really breaks or makes a photo, especially in a full-length, is focusing. Make sure that you have the face, especially the eyes, in focus. If they're not in focus, a lot of times, if the eyes are not clean, A lot of times that's really a bad portrait. That will ruin a portrait faster than bad lighting. Mostly because when we think of eyes, it's the window to the soul. If the soul's muddy, a lot of times we don't look at the picture and it doesn't look good, it's all blurry. So focusing is always on the eyes. The eyes need to be nice and sharp, especially if you want to capture the face and show the entire portrait as being this person and show that window or that gateway to the soul. And that's really a great tip as well, is figuring out what on your subject is the most important thing. You might have a portrait that isn't quite, the subject is not quite the subject. It's the subject is the subject, but you still have maybe some other element in the scene that you want to draw attention to. Such as maybe if you have a baseball player, maybe they have their bat hanging and their glove off the back of the bat. You might want to increase the depth of field or change where you focus, keeping the eyes as sharp as possible, but try to get the glove in sharp as well. So there is exceptions to the rule, but at the same time, it's one of those things where you can bend it very easily or you can break it very easily and get a very successful portrait. When talking about posing for full portrait, if you have a straight standing person, full portrait, you do not want them just squared up football player styles straight on. I've seen it work for guys for football portraits, but I really haven't seen it work for women too much, because it doesn't show the flowiness, the feminine side, I suppose, of the portrait. Maybe you're not going for that. That's okay too. But when you're working with, you got flowing long hair and, you got some curves, you're going to want to make the portrait soft. You're going to want to make it, make the features more full or more rich or mimic what the features of the person is. So posing is going to become a very, very important thing in a full-length portrait as well. So let's get into some examples here as I look down here so I can see my boards here. Let me see if this is the example I wanted. Nope, that's not it. Let's try. Nope. Almost. I got to find it here. It's right there. There we go. I think that's it. Let me see if the other ones... What are the other ones here? Okay, so as I was talking about before about where to aim your camera and how high or how low, this was just a test shot, really. It wasn't really like I planned this portrait out really well. I like the tree. I like the doppels of light in the background. They're kind of soft. I kind of like the pose. She's kind of like got one leg in front of the other. I don't like the hands. We were just kind of screwing around with the hands, just like, oh, put them here, put them here. I don't know. But what I like is that she's not squared up. She's not both feet planted on the ground, stiff-legged. She also has a little bit of a head tilt and a little bit of a shoulder tilt that kind of offset the lines to the tree. So the tree and her are really the subject. The eyes and the face need to be as sharp as possible. The hair also plays a key role too. Hair can go out of focus and be pretty nice. But where I'm standing and where I have the camera is about waist level to me, and that's still a touch too high. As you can see, I almost feel like I'm looking down on her, and that's really not what you want in a portrait. You don't want to have that the camera's dominant. You want the subject to be dominant. So you want to be right on the same plane of field. You want to be on the same, you want to make the subject look as large as the perceptually large. I'm trying to think of how to put this. Perceptually as large as they should be in the picture. Here, like I said, I'm pretty tall, so even me getting down to about my waist level wasn't far enough down to really bring the camera plane down to her belly button, and that's really where I wanted to be. So if you look at where her arm crosses her waist, probably right about there's where her belly button is. As you notice, that's really not the center of the photo. The center of the photo is probably a little bit higher, right around her mid-chest area, maybe a little bit lower than her mid-chest area, the sternum area. So I'm a little bit too high on this, and I can really recognize that. And I think that's one of the things I want to give to you as part of this technique with taking full-length portraits, is get down to your subject's level. When you're taking a full-length portrait, one of the key things is putting the person into perspective and not distorting that perspective. So when you come above the person, you know, it tends to make their heads and shoulders bigger and their feet and waist a little bit smaller. Now, this could be a good technique for something, but really for a standard full-length portrait, I don't think it works. I really think you need to get the camera down further. So when you're taking a portrait of somebody and it's their entire body, you need to get down to about that waist level or come down to their level so that when you shoot this photo, the perspective is not the camera tilting down, it's more tilting straight. Now, another way to take care of this is to level the camera, okay? And then you don't go off level. You always keep the camera level, but then you adjust how high it is to make the portrait. I've seen that technique work for several very successful portrait takers, where what they do is they have a bubble level on their camera, and what they do is they just raise and lower the camera until they get the shot where it's a full-length portrait exactly the way they want, and then everything looks like it's proportionally set inside that frame. And again, as we look at this picture, I have that same thought process. I'm just too high. Her shoulders, she looks like she has kind of football shoulders. Her chest is a bit bigger, but then her waist kind of slims down a little bit, and then her legs kind of taper right off screen. And I really think that's really a detraction from this shot. Hi. Let's see. Where's my other example here? I really got to find a better way of labeling all these things because I got so many slides that I can play with. Another great thing too is when you're doing portraits, if you're going to work with a camera that has ETTL, which is basically an automatic metering mode with a flash, you really don't need technically to meter per se. You can actually experiment just with the flash and just kind of set your aperture or set your shutter or set one setting, and then slowly adjust the camera and take test shot after test shot until you get what you're looking for. You want to speed up the process, grab a light meter. One of these babies, man, you go out there and you take the ambient light that's on the person, then you can kind of figure out, okay, that's my shutter speed and aperture. Let me up the aperture. This is now my shutter speed. That's what I should set the camera to. Set the flash, boom, fire. You should get about the result that you're looking for. Then what you can do is then you can just play with just the shutter speed. That's all you're going to play with. You don't touch the aperture. And you make the shutter speed a little faster or a little slower to lighten or darken your photo's background, but the flash still fires at the same intensity, thus lighting your subject the same way. So the subject stays fairly much the same, but then you can lighten and darken the background accordingly. So that's kind of a neat technique inside almost any portrait, but really for full-length portraits, it really aids itself. So let me give that to you again real quick. You set your camera, get your composition all set, grab a light meter reading or take an aperture and say, okay, I want to be at f5.6. You don't touch the f5.6 after that. All you touch is then you roll your shutter faster or slower to lighten and darken the photo, and then the flash continues to light the subject based on f5.6, thus giving you lighter or darker backgrounds, which is a great technique, especially when you're working in mixed lighting. Maybe you got too bright of a background and you want to darken that up. Well, you make a faster shutter speed, but leave your aperture alone so the flash fires at the same intensity. That way you're adjusting how dark the background gets. So you're kind of blending in the background and the foreground, and that's kind of a flash technique. I'll get into it more detail in a future show, but that's kind of a neat thing, and it's worth looking up and really going through it. Maybe I can get Jakey to write an article about it. But that's really a great thing to keep in mind when you're doing full-length portraits. So let's find one here. Okay, so here's Tiffany. Tiffany's been one of my favorite models because she's always willing to just pose, and I just told her, okay, let's do some high school senior portraits, and she just gets up there, and this is what we got. Great shot. I can tell you all sorts of things that is wrong with it that I don't like, but there's a bunch of things that I really do like. I got the camera down low enough where I'm actually pointed right at her waist, right where her hands are. and it put her inside the picture. And I think she proportionally looks right for the most part, except for that front leg. I was just a touch too wide angle and not enough telephoto, and it kind of made that leg stand out. So that front left leg of hers, or on the right side of the frame, really stands out a bit too much, and I really don't. I just don't like it. It's just too big for me. I guess it should be a little bit smaller. A little more feminine, I guess. But really, the portrait's nice. I like it. I like that she has everything is moving. Everything's bent. Her knees are bent. Her feet are bent. Her elbows are bent. Her hands are bent. Her shoulders are bent. Her eyes are looking at the camera, but her head is tilted and slightly twisted. Everything on her is in motion. And the background's very static. We're on a set of stairs. Okay? Can we dial this up? Absolutely, we can dial this up. But what I want to get to is, and what I'm trying to demonstrate here is the fact of getting the camera plane, which is that imaginary line that comes out of the camera lens straight out, kind of like a laser beam. And whether you're high, low, looking up, looking down, I got this pretty flat. It's looking pretty flat straight at her, and it really makes her fit into the photo a lot nicer. Now, I should have backed that up. I should have put the flash over to her right a little bit further, or to her left, film right, and backed up and telephotoed in or zoomed in a bit, and I think this would have been a lot better portrait. Another great example of, you got some static elements, you got all these railings and all these lines moving around, it's quite busy, but then you have her, and she does this very well. Just tell her to, boom, here it is, and she just bends everything. So she tilted the head towards me, or tilted the head away from me, tilted the chin towards me, gave me a nice smile. The shoulders aren't quite flat, but they kind of look flat in this. I mean, I wanted her to keep dropping the further away shoulder down a little bit more, just to give a little bit more of a line. It didn't quite work. But for the most part, everything's bent. The foot's bent, the knees bent, the hips are bent, the back is slightly bent. She should have been a little bit more postured straight up and down, but not bad. The elbows are bent, the hands are crossed. There's a lot of different things. The entire body is in motion. And that's kind of another thing that makes a really great full-length portrait, is everything being in motion. Everything has a place and is in motion. It creates a sense of it belongs there, and it's bent. It's not stiff and rigid. It's not like, oh, get away from me. That stiff and rigid look can get kind of bad for portraits. Here we have my favorite Kay. She's this was a great senior portrait session because we were both willing to do a lot of different things just to get a shot, and I think I was standing in water for this one, or pretty close to standing in water for this one. And the whole thing with this again is that the knees are slightly bent, the feet are slightly bent, everything is bent, everything is in motion. Her head, I mean, we could have tilted her head a little bit more and gotten a little more motion. Her eyebrows, one's lifted, one's not, so there's a lot of motion here anyway. But then you have that static, the stone is very static, very, very rigid, very rugged looking, and then you got the nice greenery in the background. Again, bringing the camera lens as far down as I can get it to be level with her so that she fits into the portrait, so it makes it look like she proportionally fits. And again, I'm going to keep preaching that, I guess, because I really do enjoy that thought process. And I think these two photos are really, yes, these two photos really depict this. Here is a really great photo that I started off with, and I thought, well, geez, this is really great. And then I reviewed it, and I looked at it, and I go, oh, geez, I'm too high. I'm looking down on her. It does kind of detract from the perspective and where I'm looking and what I'm looking at and so on and so forth, and I have more of a downward look to it. So I took the next shot, which was this shot, and I got more down on her level and still put her in the frame, put her at the 2/3 mark, and really kind of brought it in. I think this is a better portrait than this one, first off. And I think it's just because she looks better in the frame. Now the question is lighting. Nice soft light from the right side of the camera. Gives it enough depth of field, gives it a nice texture. Her hair has nice texture. A little bit too dark in the shadow there between her hair and the wall, but not too bad. But I really think it has a lot of potential. And I really like having that plant right there because it just kind of gives it kind of a nice little frame. Like I said, coming between being too tall to being right on the same plane as her. I was literally down on my knees, sitting on my butt, pretty much shooting from the ground and straight forward, and that's how I got this shot. Which is probably why I didn't quite get it level either. I notice everything feels like it's running off to the left side of the frame. So, but hey, nobody's perfect. So let's see what else we have. Do we have another example? I think I'm it for that. I think. So again, we'll just recap real quick, just so that we can recap. Let me set up so I'm back in the camera view here. So when we're doing full-length portraits and trying to get that entire look from top to bottom, full length, and we're shooting, depending on our height as a photographer, really is going to depend, and how tall the subject is going to depend on where you're going to put your camera and where you're going to do stuff. So first tip, write it down, take it to the bank, whatever you want to do with it, is to bring the camera plane down. So that plane where, like I said, if you had a laser beam shooting right out the middle of your viewfinder, out the middle of the lens, out the middle of whatever, and you're firing it out there, if that is level with the world, okay, where do you have to put it vertically, up and down, to capture that frame? And I think that's one of the things that is you need to kind of remember, especially because that really, I think, really puts the person into the frame a lot better rather than looking down on them, which is a lot of my shots because I forget I'm so tall. I tilt the camera down. I'm looking at them down. So that's one of my biggest mistakes I think I always do with any portrait, whether it's wedding portraits or whatever. I forget that I'm tall and then I just aim down and take the picture because I'm just holding the camera. So think about where you are level out the camera, then think about where you are height-wise. Bring the camera down and get where, so that's the first thing. Bring the camera down, the camera plane down to their navel, their belly button area, their waist level. That's about where you want to be for a full-length portrait. Now, in a shot where, like this shot here that we're going to be working on in Photoshop, to bring the camera level down too far, like down to where her belly button or waist would be, it would probably be a little bit too far, and then we'd be looking up at her somewhat. But right about where her knees is, or right about where her elbow is about that plane mark that I keep talking about. So, and I really love this pose. I mean, this, and that's the other thing. Poses are great too. If you're standing straight up and down pose, have your subject tilt their hips to the right or to the left, and then bend one knee and put the heel of their foot up on their ankle, and move their arms, and make sure every piece of their body is bent in some way, shape, or form, but still comfortable for them, and see what you get. A lot of times you can be very surprised at what you get, because sometimes you can get that flowy look to it and just be like, wow, that's just great, The other thing you could do in full-length portraits and even other portraits, but I like to do it mostly in full-length portrait, is take, if you got a fan that you can bring with you, or if you got a studio area or a home area where you can put a fan and blow the hair and get the hair in motion, that could be a very interesting full-length portrait as well, especially if you got a subject with very long hair. So that's really kind of neat too. So, full-length portraits, off-camera directional lighting, posing, make sure everything is tilted, bent, or moved, in some way, shape, or form, just to give it a bit of fluidity. And yes, that is a word. And, make sure that you got some lines happening, so the eyes form a line that's now pointing, so it brings your eyes as a viewer into the portrait, and then down to their hands, and their hands bring it back up to their face. So you never kind of leave the portrait. So lines are always good thing and important. Make sure your camera's on level and lower. You don't want to look down or look up at your subject per se unless you're getting creative. A good place to start is always level out the camera, put it at the height of their belly button, and make sure that you talk to your subject. Don't just get quiet behind the camera and not talk, because if you stop talking or you stop interacting with your subject, a lot of times they get stiff, they get nervous. It creates an uncomfortable silence. Talking with your subject and toying around, kidding, joking, just messing around, saying, okay, let's try this, and do like a strange, I don't know, pose, like kick one leg up or whatever, and just have fun with it and keep it light. Bring some music, put some iTunes on, or if you're shooting remotely, have your car with the stereo going. Just have some fun and just play the music and go, okay, I want you to pose to the music, and just fire off shots. You never know what you're going to get. So here's a great shot of Kayla. I love this shot. This was one of my favorite shots from her senior portrait picture. I really like it because three things: the directional lighting coming in at this direction. There's a flash coming in from the bottom up this way, just to light just a little bit under this chin and under the nose. It does give it a nice loop lighting. A few things that I don't like is I don't like how dark it is over here by her head in the wall. I also don't like the color tone. I really think it's way too washed out, way too white, gray, bluish, whatever color you want to call that. The other thing I think we could probably do is we could also do kind of like a vignette or something to draw the attention of the viewer back into the portrait, frame it in and keep them there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some really quick edits. I'm going to try to tell you everything I'm doing as I'm doing them. And hopefully when we get done, we're going to have something really nice to say, okay, here's a nice senior portrait. So first thing what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to just warm this up just a touch. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to use probably a photo filter. So I'm going to go down to the adjustment layers here, which is this half moon cookie looking thing. And you click on it and you go up to photo filter. And I'm going to use a warming filter, but I'm not sure which one I want, because I'm going to try to match the color the best I can to the effect that I want. See, that kind of gives it kind of a greenish tinge, though. I want to, maybe the LBA or 85. Probably 85 looks good. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to intensify it ever so slightly until I get the color tone that I want. I want her to look a little bit warmer. I want her hair to look brown. She is a brunette. The 50%, that looks pretty good. That might be a little too much, actually, but let me back it off just a touch. Maybe 40%. 40% looks good. And there's nothing saying that you have to bang, 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 bang and get done with these. You can actually sit on a filter and just kind of play with this until you get the exact look that you want. Take your time. Enjoy it. Let the artistic process flow. Philosophically, I know I sound like a raving nut, so like that's any different than any other time. But, take your time and enjoy it. I mean, sometimes, like especially if you're a working professional or you're working with, shooting a wedding and you got to get done quickly. A lot of times we lose that piece of it because we're in such a hurry to get things done to, pump out the end result and get it done. If you're just doing this for fun, take your time, enjoy it. I like how that warms it up. Maybe I want to try a different color. So let me click color, and maybe instead of this orangish color, maybe let's try a purple color. Ooh, look at this. This could get interesting. Oh, wow, that is kind of neat. So everything kind of takes on a purplish tinge. I mean, it's a great way to experiment, and this is almost monochromatic in a purplish tinge, So this could be very, very interesting shot by itself, but I'm really going to look to go back to where I was here. So a little bit warm. Down here at the bottom of most of your adjustment layers, you have some return to adjustment list, switch panel to expanded view. I forget what shows. This is the effects of all layers, toggle layer visibility. I like this one, the eyeball with the undo arrow. You can look and see what it looked like before by clicking on it and holding it. So there's the bluish tone. there's with the warmed up filter, the warming filter at, well, it's a little too high intensity. Let's try 45%. So without, with, as you can tell, as I'm clicking on it and unclicking it, you can see the difference. Take your time and enjoy it. Just let the moment be the moment. Enjoy watching as you make changes to these portraits. I think that's the biggest joy of Photoshop that I think I can ever say to anybody. Is one of the reasons why I love working in Photoshop, is just to be able to sit back and just do a few edits here and there, work on this, work on that. Okay, we got to take out a blemish. Okay, just do that. Oh, that's really a neat way to do it. Let me try a couple different techniques. Oh, this is the best way. And just take your time and have fun, and just let the experience be the experience. So clicking back on layers so I can see my layers again. I like the idea that the photo filter there. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is go Control Alt E, I think, is to flatten the image. No, edit undo. That didn't work. I'm going to just go to layer and I'll find it. Merge down is Control E, so let's try that. Control E this, Control E. And now it's one layer again. I got rid of the adjustment layer, no more adjustments to that layer. And there's a reason. What I want to do is I want to start working on blemishes. So let's take out this blemish here. So we're going to zoom in nice and tight. And we're going to go over the patch tool here, which is also the home for the spot healing brush. And I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to make my brush size the size of that little blemish there. And zap it away. I don't like the way it did it. Edit undo. I'm going to try to do a little bit smaller brush size, see if it looks better. Almost. One more time. Yeah, that looks alright. Looks like she got a piece of dirt there, so let's try to hit it a couple times, see if we can make it more skin tonish. Alright, that'll work. Okay, we got a little blemish over here. Boom. And of course I'm working in low res for the show, because the show can only go to 1200 to 1280 by 768 or whatever the number, 720, whatever the numbers are. And so, you know, working low res, you can see as I zoom in and she starts getting pixelated, there's not a lot of detail in like her eyebrows or her eyes. So there is some loss of quality as I'm working on these things. But it can be a lot of good things coming out of this because we can work quickly in a lower res photo. Let's see. I'm wondering what I want to do here. I think I really want to make the blue jeans really blue. Okay. So, whoops, I missed a blemish. Hang on. Right here. Will that work? Almost. There we go. All right. Beautiful. So we removed some blemishes. We made some adjustments. So we made a color adjustment, made her warmer. We took out some blemish. So now the next thing I want to do is I really want to make her eyes sparkle a little bit, because I really like her eyes, because there's these misty green eyes and they're very lovely. But, you know, without a little bit of help and a little bit better lighting, I should have had a little bit better lighting, I suppose. They kind of went a little bit dull. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut out the eyes, and you're going to see me do this very quickly. And I'm going to cut out both eyes at the same time, because I want to really edit them at the same time and really do what I want with them one time. So we're going to go edit copy, and we're going to edit paste. And then what you'll notice is that her eyes are now all by themselves here on this layer. Okay, so now I can take and do an image and adjustment, and I can do a hue and saturation, and we can saturate them. We can recolor them. So maybe we don't like them green. We want them really green. We can lighten or darken them. As you can see here. We can even colorize and just say, okay, I want to colorize them to maybe about that color, and oversaturate them. Now what we want to do is bring back the original photo. Now notice that they're not blended in very well. What we can do now is we use a layer mask. So we add a layer mask by hitting this box with the white circle in it down here on the toolbar. And we click on the mask to make sure it's selected, and go grab a paintbrush. So a little paintbrush here. And then we have black and white. Black will take away the effect. White will put it back in. So we can do this two ways, and I'll show you two different techniques of doing this. You can start with nothing by taking it all out. Okay, then switching to white and going back in with a really small brush and just go over the portion of the eye that you want to be green. And needless to say, I goofed that up. I went into the white of her eye here, so we'll take that out. And you just shape it up a little bit at a time. And you'll notice it's way too green. I agree, it's way too green, okay? But what we want to do, I can just hear Jason or one of the other guys that watch the Photoshop section all the time just being like, oh yeah, that's way too green. Yeah, I know it's way too green. It's for demonstration purposes only. Man. So I'm going to take, now the other way to do this is we can just shape it up with a brush and just not totally lose the entire effect and just paint up around the eye and then thusly getting that effect. So there's the effect. Now what we can do is just take and we can color it. So change the blend layer of that layer. So we click on the layer again. Up here at the top it says, just under layers it says normal, and you can change the opacity or the fill. You can change the way it blends it. I'm going to change it to color. And you'll notice how now the color of the original eye and the color of that edited eye now blend together. It's a little dark, which is kind of good. But now you can take the opacity and back it off until you get the exact effect that you're looking for. We don't want it all the way off, which is there. We want it probably somewhere around probably 30% by the time I get done with it. Maybe 40. 40-ish. 30, 40, 30, 40, 40. Do I hear 10, 10, 15, 15, 20, 20, 25, 20? I wish I could be a caller. That'd be great. An auction caller, that'd be great if I could do that whole bit. So, okay, so now we've given her a little bit more color in her eyes. Now, the other thing I want to do is since we're right on that layer, I want to over-sharpen them. So I'm going to take and I'm going to go to Filter, and I'm going to, since I'm on that layer, I'm going to go to Sharpen and Unsharpen Mask. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look and see how to get what I really want out of it. So right now I'm just doing 100%. Let's go to 150%, see if we get, and what I'm really trying to get is I want those little bit of catch lights in her eyes to sparkle up here, and I gotta find it. And of course, because I'm coloring her eyes, it probably won't, the effect won't happen. So what we can do, since I just realized what my mistake was, I'm coloring her eyes with that other layer. Instead of coloring it, let's go to normal and see what it looks like. It looks fine, looks just dandy. Now let's go to the filter, sharpen, and we should see some effects of the sharpening. So we really sock it up. Yeah, now we can see the effects of what's going on with the eyes. So maybe we want to do up here and way down here. Maybe not. Let's try the opposite way. So what this does is the radius is how many pixels around each pixel is sharpened, basically, and then how much of the sharpening do you want to do? You want to double the sharpening under the, so basically it takes the highlights and make them more highlighted, takes the shadows, make them a little bit darker, and that's how you get sharpness, the contrast between the two. So really you're just making the contrast between the differences in color, differences in tone a little bit more, and that's giving you a sharper image. So we're going to go probably somewhere around 100%, and like so. And we're just about out of time. So we now colored your eyes. Now one last thing I want to do real quick in less than 2 minutes. 2 minutes or less or your pizza's free. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take and oversaturate this photo. Whoops, I didn't grab the right slider. Let me grab the right slider here. Oop. I am going to totally oversaturate this photo. Notice how her clothing and her, and the background and stuff all came really up with the oversaturation as well. So what I want to do is I want to tone down just certain aspects of this, like her face, her eyes, so on and so forth. So what we can do is then go back into the layers, click on the layer mask for the hue and saturation, and we can paint away the effect. Maybe not with totally black. Maybe like we want to just reduce the effect to maybe like, 25% of the original. So we do like a dark gray. And then what we can do is just take a nice big brush, and just go over her face just a little bit. Might be a little bit too much. Yeah, it looks like a little too much. Let me try one more time here. Let's try, let's try just about a grayish. Let's go this way. Yeah, there we go. That looks a little better. So we're just toning down that saturation just a little bit on the skin tones, but we want to leave everything else. Maybe a little bit in the hair highlights because they kind of came out orange. And voila. Okay, so now we have this really nice oversaturated. The jeans are really oversaturated. You can even make this black and white. This is really a neat effect too, in less than a minute, I suppose. We can take and do a black and white conversion on this. I don't care what you do for how you set it up or whatever. More white, less white. Let me go maximum white, see what it looks like. That's kind of a neat effect, but not really my favorite. So let's leave it. However, maybe we'll do lighter, see what it looks like. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so we go back into that same mask, and we can just bring in the color of just the jeans. So now we can bring, whoops, let me get a black mask here. So we're going to bring back the entire oversaturated color of the jeans. And I'm just going to do this very, very quickly, so you'll see me make a lot of mistakes here. So if we just paint in the jeans, you'll notice that the jeans will take on the color of blue. And now you have this wonderful color black and white conversion. So we can continue on this with future portraits, of course. I'm going to save this, yes, as a JPEG. I got to find it here. Cancel. Why did it not save as a JPEG? File. Save as a JPEG. There we go. Save. Yes, okay. La. Okay, so back to the original. So here's the original. Here's now the photo edits. Original, like I said, and we got a little weird there. Notice the blue jeans really sparkle up there, a little bit more blue. That neat black and white effect with a little bit of color, so on and so forth. So, I guess I'm done. So that's been this week's Digital Babble, and with your host, me, Flipper. You can go check us out on our website at ttlny.com. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Facebook. If you want to send us your photos or you want questions, comments, whatever, you can give us an email at thedigitalbabble@gmail.com. Again, go check out the website. Check us out every Wednesday night here on fingerlakes1.tv or fingerlakes1.com. And as I say at the end of every show, I will see you on the flip side.
A Flipside Studio production. It's the Digital Babble. Tune in every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on fingerlakes1.com. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter.